every day. And for years, what Tesla investors have been hearing is that the competition is coming. Well, as you know, many of the legacy automakers have pulled back their efforts on making electric vehicles. They've not been able to find a way to make compelling cars that are also cash flow positive. So today we've got the CEO of BMW, Oliver Zipse, and coming out fighting hard to reverse the European Union's mandate to end sales of gas cars by 2035. Elon Musk replied, saying that actually Oliver is thinking of this wrong. The mandate will actually save BMW, as we can expect that all transport will be electric. For our second story, we have the CEO of electric car maker Lucid, Peter Rawlinson, saying that actually the Chinese electric vehicles are behind Tesla. Yes, he says they are still years and years behind Tesla. We'll take a look at why he thinks this is the case. I've got Brian White joining us. Brian is a host of his own YouTube channel called FutureAza. Thank you so much, Brian.
I tell you, man, BMW is making some very strange claims, and for that matter, so is Peter Rawlinson. So this will be fun to get into.
So you and I both looked up before we got started. How do you pronounce Oliver Zipse? And some places we heard Zipse.
I think it's Zipse. But in the comments, we welcome a dozen corrections.
German name Zipse, or Zipse or Zipsy, but I think it's Zipse. Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at the news. It says the CEO said this. He continues to lobby against the EU regulated end of ICE sales in 2035. From our point of view, the introduction of this ban was naive. We made this clear right from the start and had to take a lot of public criticism for it, but now many players are opening their eyes. This is from Alex Voigt. Alex has been on my channel. I've interviewed him. He is just brilliant, and you should watch that interview. He is based in Germany, so he follows the European automakers like no one else does. Very, very good about this. And so this lobbying against this ICE mandate to end car sales by 2035, and then Elon Musk replied. So he said, contrary to what he thinks, that mandate, if it remains, will actually save BMW because all transport will be electric, with the ironic exception of rockets. He said this several times before. We're actually witnessing it as it happens now. Electric vehicles, electric transport is just so much more positive in so many ways, not just the fact that they're better for the environment. But yeah, so you got the BMW refusing this, pushing back on the ICE. Elon saying you got to like double down on electric vehicles. What's your angle on all this?
So BMW is already making compelling electric vehicles. They make some great stuff. I think it's too expensive for what it is, but like the X5, I had a chance to drive that in Vancouver, BC last year, fully charged. This year, whenever it was, and it was great. It was fun. It was exciting. It had all the things that I would want in an electric car, apart from a third row. And it was priced a little too much like an X while delivering more like a Y. But it was very comfortable, very pretty, very fun. When Elon says this is how you save your company, a lot of people will push back and say, no, no, no. If they delay the electrification mandate, that allows them to build what's most profitable for them. Well, that's great inside Germany, but what about the rest of Europe? What about the rest of the world? The rest of the world, all the major markets are making moves toward electrification. And even if he buys time, that's all it's doing is buying time. The sooner you get on board, the sooner you make a compelling, profitable EV, the sooner you will dominate. If BMW could find the kinds of production efficiencies that Tesla and BYD appear capable of doing, then they would be able to lean all the way into it, go full electric, beat out Mercedes and other competitors on their own home turf, and dominate. And I think BMW has the engineering talent. Sandy Munro, when he tore apart the BMW i3 10 years ago, he looked at it and said, BMW is going to be the leader. They're going to beat Tesla. They're going to beat everybody because it's so good for such a limited run first effort at the time that all they have to do is build upon this success and they will dominate. And then they just didn't. The i7 was a hybrid, and that was disappointing. deeply disappointing. So yeah, they just need to get serious if they wish to remain a global player.
So I think you just said it, but I think that there's three things that these automakers need to be concerned about, right? So one is the government, which is lobbying against. Then there's other competitors, like you've just talked about, and then there's the consumer. At the end of the day, the consumers is it's like electric vehicles has just gone out of the barn now. It's too late to bring it back in. He's trying to slow things down, and this is some of his arguments. You can kind of feel, you can kind of hear this desperation here. So he said, wanting to regulate markets on such a scale ultimately makes everything worse: the competitive position, the ecological impact, and job security. So I get what he's saying, right? Regulation by governments is always, it's sometimes will backfire. So he believes that, you shouldn't have these kind of regulation. I think there's some truth to that. The ecological impact, he'll talk about that later, makes no sense. And job security makes no sense. Again, it's a free market. But not, that he's talking about the regulation. Then he says, we're currently only experiencing a prelude. If the regulations were to remain as they are, this would have blatant consequences for the industrial base in Europe. According to our estimates, value creation in the automotive industry would roughly halve, with a corresponding impact on employment. So, absolutely true. They're going to, he's warning, he can see it. They're dead. So, instead of fighting the lobby, instead of doubling down on EV and recognizing it, he is trying to fight the laws. What's your thoughts on these comments?
So I always say never ask a barber if you need a haircut, and he is that barber. Uh, it's a very easy soundbite to say the government shouldn't be picking winners and losers. And it's very easy for him to say that when the government has already picked a winner and it was internal combustion, has been for a century. There's no reason, it's like the farmers in Brazil who say, we need to stop deforestation now that I've deforested and have a profitable farm in what used to be pristine forest land. Now it's just a soy farm or a palm oil farm. No, that's trying to protect yourself rather than actually caring about the future. If he actually cared about the future, why would he say jobs are more important than breathable air and energy independence? I understand that Germany is in a tough spot because they are no longer importing oil and gas from Russia the way they used to because of Russia's shenanigans in the region. And that's difficult for Germany. It's made their prices among the highest in the world. There's something like 37 cents per kilowatt hour for residential power. That's a lack of planning on Germany's part that they're working to overcome. They didn't have the foresight to predict a global conflict of this scale, but they need to move past it. There are jobs in the green economy. They're not the same jobs, they're different jobs. Some people can retrain, some people will choose not to. But having 2035 as the target means there's a lot of time for individuals to plan accordingly. Germany's been lucky enough to be an automotive powerhouse in the world for a long time. They're not that big of a country, and yet there are so many German brands you can name: BMW, Mercedes, Porsche, Audi, Volkswagen. They've got a lot going on. And it would be unfortunate to watch that reign come to an end, but it doesn't have to. Oliver, you just got to move into the future, and I think you're well positioned to do it.
Yeah, I think he's obviously scared. So this next paragraph, it's hard to interpret. I think that there was an issue with translation. I'm going to try to interpret it, but it says, this is what he said. If you look at the facts, you will see that an adjustment is unavoidable. I don't know what he meant by that. With the end in 2035, he's referring to the ICE cars, an entire industry has become vulnerable to blackmail because every international competitor, every supplier knows that they are dependent on a single technology. I think what he's saying here is that with everybody in the world knowing that in Europe that they have to stop selling gas cars, they know that they're desperate, that they have to build electric vehicles, and so then suppliers can blackmail them. I don't know, international competitors they know that they're in trouble, so they're going to come in. Yeah. So, what
Ridiculous.
what's your
Ridiculous,
thought about that?
hyperbole, alarmist nonsense. Maybe he's talking about batteries. Maybe he's saying if they know we're going to need a cajillion batteries by 2035, they're going to jack up the prices. Make your own batteries. Other people are doing it. BYD makes their own batteries. Tesla makes their own batteries. Ford, in partnerships, makes their partnerships are out there to be had. But there are so many new competitors coming on that it will remain a commodity. The price war will continue because if there are batteries to sell, they will want to sell them. What other components are you talking about? People already know you need blinkers. Is there a blinker cartel? Because if there is, BMW should start installing blinkers on their cars. I don't think they have them. Then you've got all the, motors? Most companies are making their own motors. Chips, the supply is already based on the number of cars available. I don't see any part of this making sense. The lithium, the copper, these are global commodities with global supply chains. You can get it. If you wish to order a ton of lithium, Herbert, you can. It exists. So I think that's just alarmist nonsense that he's hoping sounds good to someone important who doesn't know better.
It's 2024, right? So 2035 is 11 years from now. And I can see how it's not as far as we think it is, but it's also not that this, he's feeling desperate because he's now realizing this. So this next thing he says here. So, sorry, this is from Alex. This is Alex Voigt's commentary because he is in Germany. He knows the automotive industry very well. He said the German automotive industry is up to its neck in water as it realizes that its electric cars are not generating the global demand from customers that it has always predicted. The result is that they are now increasingly losing market share and profits are shrinking. For this reason, instead of working on a better electric car, they're trying to overturn the end of ICE in Europe in 2035 and spreading fear that people vote in the upcoming EU election for all who want to stop change and the reduction of CO2 emissions. So he gave you a little commentary of how he sees it. This is the other thing that Oliver says. To this day, the assumption persists that the maximum ecological effect will be achieved if the new car market is regulated. But what about the more than 25 million existing vehicles with combustion engines in Europe? This stock of older vehicles is the main emitter, but it is not affected by the regulation at all. This is why fuels should be subject to a more demanding CO2 target. What
Well,
that
Oliver
logic, right?
doesn't sell
Yeah.
used cars. He sells new cars. So he wants the cars that he refuses to build to not be mandatory and the cars he doesn't sell to be more strictly regulated. This is a perfect portrait of someone looking out for their own best interest and to heck with everyone else. The thing about those 25 million older cars is the thing that will destroy them is time. Those will leave the road. The vehicle inspection requirements are much stricter in Europe. You have to get a test where they look at your blinkers, they look at your brakes, they look at everything. And when a vehicle is no longer up to standards, you have to fix it completely or get rid of it. So those older vehicles will be replaced, but they will be replaced with secondhand vehicles that you need to build today, Oliver.
Yeah. The logic is if I keep building ICE cars, then somehow those 25 million will be replaced. What? But okay,
Very weird.
let's continue. All right. So he then says, or this is again Alex saying this. I wonder if the Zipse believes his own misleading statements or is deliberately trying to distract the public from the real problems of the legacy automotive industry and BMW. In this interview, it became finally and for everyone visible that BMW is desperate and not competitive. Yeah, this is the kind of fear. Fear is coming. This is what they're concerned about.
Well,
then
Alex's previous comment, real quick, was right that he's worried because he's seeing that he can't pull the profit he wants on the vehicles that they sell. And that's not the market's problem. That's BMW's problem. You need to get your own efficiencies under control. That's what other companies are desperately trying to do. And, the demand just hasn't surfaced. The demand is there. It's not at the price you're selling at. That's the problem.
Not for them. Yeah.
Not for them.
This is the table that Alex shared, the global quarterly BEV sales per brand from 2021 to 2024. Each of those lines is 2021 to, or the quarterly from those 3 years. So you can see that Tesla It's just continued to grow significantly, going up. BYD is going up even higher in Europe. And then you've got BMW.
And you've got the
Actually,
European brands. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not sure this is Europe, by the way.
No,
It's global.
that's
Sorry,
global.
global.
Yeah.
Yeah. So BMW, not terrible, but they're
Nope.
just not competitive. Unfortunately,
Not
none of them
picking up
are.
the
I mean,
way they would like to. But the
yeah.
trend is still right. If you were to back out Tesla and BYD to earlier years, you would see their ramps didn't look that much different than BMW's. BMW just has to get more aggressive and quickly.
Let's go to the next story here, which is China EVs are still behind Tesla, says Lucid CEO. That's shocking. This is Lucid, an electric vehicle maker, Peter Rawlinson. And, you know, let's not talk about Lucid first. Let's talk about Tesla first. But he says that Chinese electric vehicles are still behind Tesla. This is his comment. If you look at the advance in core EV technology, these Chinese electric vehicles are still years and years behind Tesla. So, in terms of elegance of their drivetrain technology, the batteries, the way things are integrated, it's not even close.
And I would say that's true across most EV competitors to Tesla. What they've done is difficult. Bringing the software in house was the smartest thing they ever did. Sure, they made a big enemy, a lifetime mortal foe of Dan O'Dowd, but it was necessary to get all the components to work together in absolute harmony. And Volkswagen's Cariad group found that hiring 10,000 software engineers was not the approach that they needed to make theirs just as good. And other companies who are trying to design in-car iOSs are finding that they need to be a little bit of everything to absolutely everybody in order to make it work. And a one-size-fits-all solution is never going to look as nice as something that's tailor-made.
Yeah. So this is interesting because it's coming from, third party CEO of Lucid electric vehicle, who could see Tesla as a competitor. He could, talk badly about Tesla, but he's saying no, the Chinese EVs are really not as good as Tesla. And he knows this because he says, I was looking at a number of the units on the display at the Geneva Motor Show. The engineering was very disappointing, he said, told Financial Times. And then he warned, right? He said, you never underestimate the Chinese automakers. He hinted that car manufacturers in China, they learned quickly. And of course, China EVs have become a growing concern in North America and Europe. Legacy automakers have proposed extensive plans to combat the influx of China EVs entering their markets. As in the US, they've just increased the tariffs 100% from 25% to 100% for Chinese car makers importing their cars into the US. And then the article says, for instance, Renault CEO released a 19-page open letter to Europe, which included a plan to protect against the onslaught of electric vehicles coming from China. So on the one hand, you saw there that BMW's warning about this, ICE regulation 2035. You've got this automakers going after the Europe and saying, hey, you have to prevent the onslaught of Chinese EV coming in, but then they don't want to create EVs. And so this is like they're being hit in every area. And yet, if Chinese EVs are not as good as Tesla, but yet they're doing really well in Europe, what does this mean about the European EVs?
Well, so the Chinese sales in Europe are still low. And it's because by the time BYD or Li or NIO makes a car to Western standards and ships it there and accounts for the cost of the time, which does have a real cost, they're no longer really cheaper than the European models. And would you rather have, if you're in Germany, the largest car market in Europe, would you rather have one of your domestic brands, or maybe a Tesla, or a Chinese brand, which is very new in the market and untested, unproven? There's brand loyalty, and there's brands with cachet. You look at someone like Tesla, that is a premium brand. That brand has value just by itself. But then adding, it makes it really tough for them to get a foothold. If price was the only issue, you have to understand that so little of the cost of a car is actually the labor. So the labor savings building it in China isn't what's making BYD competitive. It's because they've got factories and processes and procedures that are aspiring to Tesla levels of efficiency. You remember before Oliver was the CEO of Volkswagen, Herbert Diess got a chance to tour Giga Berlin, and he said they're making cars in, 8 hours or 10, whatever it is, and Volkswagen was making them in almost 3 times the amount of time. And then just the following week, Berlin went offline for a week to retool to improve efficiency again. So I don't remember the exact figures, but Tesla makes cars faster than Volkswagen substantially. And it's because of all these procedures. That's what they need to look out for more than anything, is how nimble the Chinese companies are, how hungry they are, and how they're not sitting back on 100 years of legacy success and thinking that the market owes them sales. They know they have to scrap and fight for every last unit they deliver.
Okay. And then if we take a look at, let's look back at what Peter Rawlinson actually said. It's important, but it's not, I don't know if it's going to slow down the electric vehicle sales because consumers actually tell the difference. So the way Rawlinson looked at it, he's looking at the core EV tech years and years behind. So this is the elegance of their drivetrain technology, the batteries, and the way things are integrated. It's not even close. So I don't know if that means that it's going to be a value proposition that a consumer will be able to notice. But it's obviously significant, but it's not necessarily meaning to say that Chinese EVs won't be able to sell. What's your thinking about that?
Absolutely. I would disagree strongly that China doesn't have good batteries. I don't accept that premise. But from his perspective, Peter's looking at the highest performance possible. He's not going to be looking at LFP batteries for a vehicle made by Lucid for some time yet. He should be, because an entry level, if they're going to be making their $50,000 car in 5 years, that's something that it should probably have. But I understand where he's coming from. In terms of all these integration problems, I've seen it on rental cars. I've seen it on even cars that I've demoed at auto shows, where I'm just kind of disappointed. But that's coming from the perspective of someone who drives a Tesla every day. If you were to look, I think there's a lot of buyers out there who are still driving much older, much dumber cars. And any amount of this technology being in there and working even most of the time is going to look like magic to a lot of them. We are very critical because we see this stuff every day. We're living it. I don't expect other people to dig the way we do. When I was reviewing cars in 2007 or 8, somewhere around there, I would give people advice on what to look for in a car and what to buy. And they never took my advice, and they were always happy with their purchases because my eye was much more critical than theirs. And I think that's what Peter is showing here, is that he does know what a good looking car looks like. And to his very high standards, which I believe he does have very high standards, there's nothing in China that he saw at the auto show that was sufficiently compelling to him. That's a very big auto show. I don't know. I can't imagine he saw everything, but he saw enough.
Yeah, I think the other comment is that you said it earlier, which is Lucid is in a different segment, and you got to compare apples with apples, not apples and oranges. And so Chinese, they're playing in a different segment, even against Tesla. So they don't have to have the top of the line, batteries, the top of the line electric vehicle drivetrain. They're trying to sell to a certain segmentation. So that I just want to make sure that I understand what he's saying. I still take it for that is truth. Tesla is certainly ahead, but maybe, like you don't need to be the best if you're selling for lower segment car. Thank you so much, Brian. Appreciate your time here. Follow him on his channel at YouTube at FutureAza. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.